this Sunday was Super Bowl Sunday. And so I want to congratulate all of us here in America for surviving the Swiftie coup. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce took over the country. That was like January 6th. That was a lot like January 6th, that Super Bowl.
That was Tay leading her army of so many lovely people. The Tay fever.
America will not be the same moving forward. It happened just as planned, a totally rigged game, all that stuff. But something much more important happened on Sunday that we saw coming for a while. So I want to take you back a little bit before then. Biden warns Netanyahu against RAFAH operation without credible safety plan. This reported by The Guardian. This is early Sunday morning. In a call on Sunday with Benjamin Netanyahu, Joe Biden told the Israeli prime minister that Israel should not launch a military operation in Rafah, quote, without a credible and executable plan for ensuring the safety of and support for the more than 1 million people sheltering there. Rafah is a city of 280,000 that's now populated by 1.4 million because the people living there now have been displaced from their cities and towns to the north. The call between the U.S. president and Netanyahu was the first between the two leaders since Biden on Thursday used the phrase over the top to describe Israel's military strikes in Gaza in response to the October 7th attack by Hamas. Biden officials with the United Nations have warned that an Israeli military ground offensive in Rafah, where about 1.3 million Palestinians are sheltering, would lead to a, quote, bloodbath. Israel's military has appeared determined to move forward with the offensive while it remains unclear where the large number of civilians could be safely moved away from danger. Also on Sunday morning, Benjamin Netanyahu actually appeared on Channel 7's Sunday news show, and here's a little bit of how this interview went.
Minister, let me ask you right away, what's your response to President Biden saying that your response in Gaza has been over the top?
I appreciate President Biden's support for Israel since the beginning of the war. I don't know exactly what he meant by that, but put yourself in Israel's shoes. We were attacked, unprovoked attack, murderous attack on October 7th, the worst attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust. And let me tell you, I think...
Notice how he just totally brushes off whatever criticism that
he
Biden
can't.
offered. Over the top, I don't know what he meant by that, but here's my talking points. Nobody's going to do anything to stop us, no matter what they say.
It's just he just brushes it off, dismisses it, and says, "Hey, put yourself in Israel's shoes." Well, put yourself in the Palestinian people's shoes for a second, because they have nowhere safe to go. They have nowhere to hide in Gaza. There's no safe space. If one place is safe, they're told that it's going to be bombed, and then they have to go to another place. They have to go to another location. No matter what they do, they're screwed. I mean, I can imagine what that could do to somebody mentally and physically, to where they're breaking down, and we see people getting sniped. We see people getting run over. We see people getting destroyed. And yet we have to put ourselves in Israel's shoes.
Yeah.
What about the Gazans?
Right.
I think we've responded in a way that goes after the terrorists and tries to minimize the civilian population in which the terrorists embed themselves and use them as human shield. We dropped thousands of flyers. We phoned Palestinians in their homes. We asked them to leave. We give them safe corridors and safe zones.
No, you don't.
So I think we're doing the right thing. And now, let me tell you one other thing. We're going to win this thing. Victory is within reach.
But you've had more than 28,000 people killed, according to the Ministry of Health in Gaza. You've had hundreds of thousands that have been forced from their homes. You have a lack of water, a lack of food. Don't you feel a moral obligation to do more, to do something to protect what is seen as to stop what is seen as a catastrophe?
I think that any civilian loss, any civilian casualty is a tragedy.
Oh, sure.
And it's a tragedy that is forced upon us by Hamas. But let me tell you something. I'd be cautious with the Hamas statistics. And I can tell you that according to these urban warfare...
By Hamas statistics, he means the Gaza Ministry of Health, which every mainstream outlet says is credible in its numbers. The Washington Post uses those numbers. And speaking of statistics, he cites a statistic in just a moment that is going to make your head spin.
Experts and other commentators, we've brought down the civilian to terrorist casualties, the ratio, down below 1 to 1. which is
Wait,
considerably less
What?
than in any other theater of similar
What's that?
warfare.
me,
And we're
sir?
going to do more. We're going to
Wait a minute.
provide
You're saying it's only been one civilian that's been killed for one Hamas terrorist in
What?
Gaza?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
But that doesn't add up.
We've killed.
No, this is an out of control lying murderer who is just free to act as he wants. And whatever Biden mumbles through at a press conference where he's trying to prove that he has a brain left matters nothing to this guy. This guy knows he can get away with absolutely anything, including saying absolutely anything. He just said, don't believe these statistics about the dead Palestinians. Believe me when I say that our ratio of civilian to terrorist below 1 to 1, every outlet out there says 2/3 of casualties are women and children. You cannot find a single outlet anywhere who would corroborate that. Not one.
No. And that's something I find impressive right now, because even corporate media, which has been a long time, been always portraying, or at least that siding with Israel. I mean, I have to say, I'm kind of overall impressed at the fact that corporate media has at least been as consistent as it has been when it comes down to covering the death toll in Gaza. I'm not going to want to paint them as, I don't want to give them any more credit because it's corporate media, but how is it 1-to-1? Men, women, and children. We've all seen the horrific imagery on Twitter or TikTok or Instagram or any other social media post that will have it up there of war crimes being presented before the entire international community. For Christ's sakes, the ICJ just took Israel and made it. South Africa took Israel to the ICJ. So they held them accountable. I mean, whatever happens afterwards will be a sight to see. But we are witnessing war crimes happening. And here we have the leader of Israel saying, oh, 1-to-1. I'm still trying to add it in my head. And you have the balls to say that in front of everyone. How?
No, it's unbelievable.
How is that even possible? No wonder. It comes as no wonder he has so many problems, not only foreign, but domestic wise. And people of Israel, if this is your representation of a leadership, then yes, people do deserve to criticize you. And no, it's not being anti-Semitic criticizing Israel. It's being anti-Zionist. Zionism and Judaism are two different things altogether. And the Israeli government is a freaking apartheid system. That's what it is. And we're witnessing a genocide. Are we going to cross the 30,000 pretty soon? 50,000? 100,000? How many of those men, women, and children are terrorists? Are you able to tell me what a terrorist looks like? What do they look like? Tell me. Explain it to me. Because what's happening in Gaza, it's going to be taking place in the West Bank, and it's just going to keep on getting worse and worse. So, I wonder if Piers Morgan is going to still ask, but do you still condemn Hamas? Well, what's left of Gaza? Do you condemn Israel?
Right. Exactly. Here we go. We got more.
We've killed and wounded over 20,000 Hamas terrorists. Out of that, about 12,000 fighters, and we're doing everything we can to minimize civilian casualties.
No.
We've killed and wounded 20,000 Hamas terrorists. Out of that, 12,000 fighters. What do you mean? So there are Hamas terrorists who aren't fighters? Like, he's just spinning absolute bullshit, just absolute nonsense.
My God.
And continue to do so. But one thing we're not going to do is we're not going to let Hamas emerge victorious. And if we leave, it'll be a tremendous victory for the Iran terror axis. It's bad for everyone.
Yeah, you've directed the Israeli Defense Forces to evacuate Rafah in advance of this ground invasion. Where are those people supposed to go? This is 1.4 million people, many of whom have fled northern Gaza. I mean, they're living in tents. Where are these people supposed to go?
Okay, so he asked a very obvious question. You've leveled every place to the north of Rafah. That's why they're in Rafah in the first place. They were told Rafah was a safe zone. So now that you're bombing Rafah and are planning on a ground invasion, where are they supposed to go? Listen to this answer.
Go.
Well, Rafah is a very small percentage of Gaza, and I think it's about 10% or 15%.
I mean, the estimates
enough area north of Gaza that has already been cleared.
Well, there's an estimated 1.4 million people in that area right now. And as the German foreign minister said, they can't just disappear. Where are they supposed to go?
Listen to this.
No, well, the areas that we've cleared north of Rafah are plenty of areas there. But
there's plenty of areas north of Rafah that you can go. The areas that you destroyed. That's why they're in Rafah in the first place. The areas north, they can go back there where there are no healthcare centers left, no schools left, not a whole lot of mosques left, not a whole lot of residential buildings or buildings of any kind. We saw footage out of Gaza City, that's northern Gaza. It's a moonscape. It's a moonscape. There's nothing there. And now this guy has the balls to come and say, well, they can go back north. We're done bombing the north, so they can just go back north so we can bomb the south. I mean, it's just so obvious that his aim is to completely destroy Gaza and make it unlivable. Whoever dies in the process dies. Whoever does not will be forced out because there will literally be nothing left. That is so clearly his intention, and that is so clearly what he means by total victory. And this part about the hostages, there was a comprehensive hostage exchange deal on offer, which he rejected. So any talk about how what happened on Super Bowl Sunday, which is being called the Super Bowl Massacre, was a rescue mission because they say they got 2 of their hostages back, you can't call an operation a rescue mission when you've already been offered your hostages back. Precisely. And that makes no sense. You can't describe it that way. You've already been offered a full hostage exchange. You had to agree to a ceasefire, and you had to agree to releasing some of the Palestinian quote-unquote prisoners. Notice we call Palestinian hostages prisoners, right? Yeah. They are hostages. A child who throws a rock at an Israeli tank going down the street and is put in prison for it, that's not a prisoner. That's a hostage. Right? So that was the deal on offer. He didn't agree to it because the hostages are far down on his list of priorities. His top priority is the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And that's why, Kid, as you mentioned, he has a lot of domestic problems. Obviously, before October 7th, it was the Supreme Court stuff. But his own people, we almost covered this. We'll probably cover this on Thursday. His own people staged massive protests against him because they can see he is prioritizing this mission of annihilation and extermination over the release of the Israeli hostages. They understand that, right? And so that's why his polls are what they are. But that is just absolutely unthinkably outrageous to say, well, they can go back north. We're already done bombing the north.
What is disappointing is the fact that the Biden administration, if this is allegedly be true, that Biden himself is saying that he's upset with Netanyahu. And the thing is, well, if you're so upset, last I checked, Biden, you are in charge of a global superpower. So technically, in theory, you do have the weight, the push, the pull to tell Israel to knock it off. You do have that political power to get the rest of the international community to unite together to stop this genocide from taking place. And in theory, our U.S. politicians could do that too. But oh, wait, most of our politicians are paid professional whores because they're owned by AIPAC, and AIPAC tells them to shut up. So what do our politicians do? People like Bernie or Warren. And yes, I'm going to be singling out the Democrats because I know what to expect out of Republican lawmakers. If you want to watch somebody disrespect Republican lawmakers, watch another show, because the Republicans, what more can be said about GOP lawmakers that hasn't been said already? Of course, they're going to be taking AIPAC money, but the Democrats ran this whole notion of caring about progressive policy issues. The Democrats ran this whole idea of caring about social issues, but Warren, Bernie, AOC, yes, I'm naming them all. They all put on this fake show of saying that they care, but they don't, because they don't have the power. They don't have the will to actually say, hey, let's actually get Congress to do an emergency session to get Israel to stop doing this so we can get the president of the United States to stop this crisis. But none of our leaders are going to do that because they are owned. We open the doors for sociopaths to buy off our politicians, and our politicians are more than happy to take that money and just go on by. They could say, "Oh, we hearts and minds, we care for the people. They're in our hearts," but they're never going to lift a finger. And we are witnessing a sociopathic dictator say, "Oh yeah, well, we're doing everything we can. The northern area of the city is cleared out. It's perfectly flat and safe. They could build like little rubble, tents and everything else, and they'll be fine while we bomb another city holding 1.4 million people." Explain to me, those who are still defending Israel's action, how is this not a genocide?
But we are working out a detailed plan to do so, and that's what we've done up to now. We're not cavalier about this. This is part of our war effort to get civilians out of harm's way. It's part of Hamas's effort to keep them in harm's way. But we've so far succeeded, and we're going to succeed again. Those who say that under no circumstances should we enter Rafah are basically saying, lose the war, keep Hamas there. and Hamas's promise to do the October 7th massacre over and over and over again.
Well, you can kill them as a
So that was a little edit there, just full disclosure, because I skipped to a later part in the interview. Just one last part I want to play, and then we'll move on.
military force, but how do you kill the idea of a resistance as long as there is occupation? At the end of this process, after this is done, after you've eliminated the military threat, doesn't there need to be a Palestinian state?
Everybody who talks about a two-state solution, well, I ask, what do you mean by that? Should the Palestinians have an army? Should they have? Can they sign a military pact with Iran? Can they
yes,
import
that's what a state
rockets
is.
from
Yes,
North Korea
yes,
and other
they-
deadly
yes.
weapons? Should they continue
Yes.
to educate their children for terrorism and annihilation? Of course, you'd say, of course not. And the substance, I've always said, in a future peace agreement, which everybody agrees is far off, I think the Palestinians should have the powers to govern themselves, but none of the powers to threaten Israel. And the most important power that has to remain in Israel's hands is overriding security control in the area west of the Jordan. That includes Gaza. Otherwise, history has shown terrorism comes back, and we don't want terrorism to come back.
Okay, so you just heard it there. He is not interested in any kind of two-state solution. So can we stop masturbating and talk about, well, we need to work towards a two-state solution? That is not going to happen. You just heard it right there. You heard it right there. They are never going to agree to that. Now you say, well, Keaton, they're never going to agree to a one-state solution. At this point, there is no solution. At this point, the world has failed this issue. And you can't tell me that a two-state solution is possible as long as
Not after
Netanyahu
this.
and his party are in power. He's not going to allow it. He just said, well, should they be allowed to have an army? Well, yeah, that's what statehood is. That's what statehood is. That's what
It is.
sovereignty is.
They
And
have
they are
to-
not going to allow for that.
You know, I mentioned it on the show, and somebody else just mentioned this too in the live stream chat. I think it's Tim Buck2 who says, who's next after the Palestinians? And if I was Jordan, if I was Syria, if I was Lebanon, if I was Egypt, I would be very concerned about overall Israel's next actions, because this unchecked destruction of Gaza
Well, they're
calls
bombing Syria already.
yeah,
They bombed Lebanon already.
Yeah, they're doing all that, but I mean, as the act as eventually this whole thing with Gaza is going to wind down eventually, but at least according to Netanyahu, the war is going to still go on until 2025. I mean, that's what he's saying. So, in other words, we're seeing more military action taking place. So, if the people of Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, everywhere else are just watching this, they're next, or they are already next. And the people of West Bank, we've seen so many of these farms and villages being raided by settlers who are going in to take their land, and the destruction of their crops and their livelihoods. This, you have to call this for what this is. This is on par with everything we would see from the Third Reich and what they were
course.
doing.
Well, that's the tragedy. That's the tragedy. And as a Jewish guy, and as Russell says this too, as Jews, it's very tragic to see that the victims of Nazi Germany just went on to oppress people much in the same way that they were oppressed themselves. And no, that is not an overstatement. If this is not a genocide, what is? This raid on Rafah, I mean, you mentioned earlier, Kit, soon it's going to be 30, 50, 100. It could be 100,000. You have 1.4 million people crammed into a city that was built for 280,000, and even that was overcrowded, with no place to go, no place to hide. You have starvation. You have famine setting in. You have disease. You have the healthcare system totally decimated. It's just, I mean, the worst could be yet to come. That's almost impossible to say, but it's true. So we just showed you two developments from Sunday morning, Super Bowl Sunday morning. Here's Super Bowl Sunday evening. Breaking. Israel is now bombing 1 million civilians trapped in Rafah, the last place of refuge in Gaza. This is the most violent and unprecedented bombardment of Rafah to date. We are witnessing a Holocaust, plain and simple. Yes, Sarah, it is plain and simple. And folks, I can't show you what I want to show you. I shouldn't say want to show you. I don't want to traumatize the audience, but I can't communicate the horror of what happened on Sunday here on YouTube or even on Rumble. We couldn't show some of this stuff. And, I'm not in the business of traumatizing my audience, but if you do want to look at this stuff, it is available on X. You can find it. I can't even recommend that you look at it because it's absolutely gut-wrenching. but we will try and communicate the essence of the story without any of the visceral blood and guts here. This from Al Jazeera. The Israeli government spent millions on a propaganda ad during the Super Bowl. At the same time, it bombarded Rafah and killed at least 67 people overnight. While Israel aired a propaganda ad, it attacked Rafah, killing at least 67. Israeli warplanes and helicopters bombed Rafah overnight. It's one of the most overcrowded places in the world. Palestinians called it a night full of horror. It was the worst night since we arrived in Rafah last month. Death was so near as shells and missiles landed 200 meters from our tent camp. That was a Palestinian father of 6 giving that testimony to Reuters. Approximately 1.4 million Palestinians were pushed into Rafah after relentless Israeli attacks. Israel promised Palestinians safety in southern Gaza, but then they bombed them anyway. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to continue with a ground invasion in Rafah. The UN said this could amount to war crimes.
Oh, wow. The UN said it could. It could. It is.
I wanted to feature this tweet here from Andrew Tate, friend of show Andrew Tate. Haha, just kidding.
Andrew Tate, huh?
But he tweeted about the Super Bowl, didn't watch it, don't know what happened, don't give a fuck. See something on Twitter about Taylor with a beer and it being rigged, blah, blah. They are blowing children to pieces in Gaza. 3-year-old girls are buried under rubble and being recovered missing their limbs. And they did it while you watch that shit. You're complicit. Where's the lie? Where's the lie? I mean, no fan of Andrew Tate, but when you're right, you're right. That's an old Jewish phrase.
I'll listen. I will take anyone that is willing right now to call out the war crimes that Israel is committing. I'm going to say that again. These are war crimes. These are genocidal actions that are taking place. People are dying, men, women, and children. And yet I remember all these Hollywood movies watching, growing up as a kid, where the U.S. were the good guys, and we'll make sure that this doesn't happen. And if there's a war taking place and there's a bad tyrant hurting innocent people, that we're going to do the right thing. And we're witnessing a war crime, and we're not doing anything. Nope. We're right here, just sitting down, being complicit. Our government leaders not doing anything. Our military not doing anything. Everyone is just kind of like, okay, maybe this will keep on playing out. We'll let this play out just a little bit longer, as the death toll keeps rising up and higher and higher. I mean, these numbers, these people, anyone that survives this horrific conflict in Gaza, they're going to remember who did this to them. They're going to remember the lost loved ones that they knew. And all what we are witnessing here is laying the foundations for the next war, for the next conflict. There will not be peace in our time. And as much as I hate saying that, because I do believe in a better future, that we should fight for a better future, after this conflict, how can there be peace? How could it be a 2-state solution, a 1-state solution? How could it be any solution whatsoever but endless hatred? Whatever hope of some kind of peace to ever exist. It died a long time ago, but it's official. Wipe it off. Don't even bring it up, because there's no way any rational human being can come up with a peace treaty or a solution for everlasting peace in that region. It is impossible.
No, there's no reconciliation for this. There could be justice potentially, but there's no way to reconcile this. I mean, it's horrible. And, I think it is good that Andrew Tate
I'll take anyone.
Message because, especially, look, these alpha types, they have this reputation for being very violent and forceful and merciless. But it's good that he expressed that sentiment. He's obviously got a huge following that had 7.2 million views. And so, as you said, we'll take it. Here's the morning after. Here's John Kirby asked about what happened, about, hey, are these messages getting through to Netanyahu, these warnings about what you shouldn't do?
No.
I know you can't give specifics about consequences, but I mean, would the United States policy change under any circumstances? You talk about an obligation to protect civilians. The president has talked about over-the-top, indiscriminate bombings. Is there anything, would there be any consequences? Would the U.S. policy change, or is it support no matter what?
I just won't get ahead of where we are right now, and I'm certainly not to engage hypotheticals. We want to make sure Israel can continue to defend itself. We want to make sure that humanitarian assistance continues to flow to the people of Gaza, and by no means has there been enough. There needs to be more. And we want to get all those hostages home. We believe that the best way to accomplish those three goals is to get an extended pause in place, to bring the violence down, to get people out and get aid in. And that's what we're focused on. And I get the thrust of the question. I'm just not going to engage in hypotheticals about changes in policy.
There's nothing hypothetical about it. There's nothing hypothetical about it. You give a warning. Benjamin Netanyahu tells you to go fuck yourself. Are there going to be consequences or not? That's the furthest from a hypothetical there is.
Exactly. And the thing is, this isn't the only group that Benjamin Netanyahu is ignoring. He not only is ignoring the U.S., he's ignoring the UN. He's ignoring every single envoy that's trying to tell him to do a ceasefire to stop this horrific conflict. So what does that tell you? Netanyahu knows what he's doing. He knows the orders that he's giving to his generals, and in turn, those generals are telling their commanders and the rest of their troops to continue on operations as they are, including those horrific cringe TikToks of Israeli soldiers dancing and singing, putting on funny little costumes and doing these ridiculous dance numbers, all the while they are shelling or use of that, ordering airstrikes on men, women, and children, civilians, first responders. People are trying to get people trapped underneath the rubble of these these buildings. So if he's saying F you, it's not hypothetical. He's saying F you. If somebody keeps on ignoring you, it means that they don't respect you. If they keep on dismissing you, it means that they don't acknowledge anything about you. So Biden, you're the president of the United States, and another leader does not recognize your authority. And anyone that you send from your administration, when you say stop, that is your voice, and they are giving a middle finger to your representatives of your administration. You are not showing American strengths. What you are showing is being submissive, Biden and Democrats. So what more can you say? We are. Last I checked, we are a global superpower. We are giving them money. What's preventing us from doing that? Oh, right, AIPAC. What's preventing us from actually lifting up a single finger? AIPAC, because our politicians are bought.
Well, there's one piece of this that we have yet to tell. The end chapter of the Super Bowl massacre story, because I mentioned at the beginning of this segment that the Kansas City Chiefs did win. Taylor Swift's boyfriend did win. And Joe Biden thought it was a good idea, or I stand corrected. Not Joe Biden. One of Joe Biden's aides. Joe Biden was probably fast asleep by this point.
Please don't.
Somebody on Joe Biden's team thought it was a good idea to declare a culture war victory by tweeting the following: as a massacre was being done in our name and with our money and weapons, just like we drew it up. What a time to bring back the Dark Brandon meme. I know you didn't necessarily mean it that way, but wow, you talk about tone deaf. I mean, that is just incredible. Just like we drew it up. This was even too much for Jezebel. Jezebel. You know you're in trouble, Democrats, when you've lost Jezebel. This is a link that they posted.
I thought they were going out of business, Jezebel. I thought they were
too, actually. You know, come to think of it, yeah, you're right about that. I didn't follow up on that. But this is from the outlet, so maybe they got bailed out by somebody. Who knows?
Okay.
What liberal politicians can't seem to grasp is that literally no one is asking for funny, terminally online politicians. We're begging for a fucking ceasefire. The embarrassing attempts at comedy we're getting instead are just gross and insulting. Absolutely. Good on Jezebel. Never thought I'd utter that sentence, but I'm forced to. Our friend Nick at RBN says, wild thing to post as Israel is committing a massacre right now. Look at that. This is as of this morning. I think I pulled the tweet, or maybe last night. 96,000 likes. I think it's up over 97,000 now. I didn't get the number of likes on Biden's tweet, but Biden had about 500,000 likes. So Nick did pretty well. I mean, look, you can't ratio the president. The president just has too much reach, right? He has too many followers, and too many bots that are automated to like everything that comes out of the POTUS account. But to get 20% of the president's like total, 100,000 likes, pretty well done by Nick Cruz. That's as close to ratioing the president as you can come, I think. Danny Haifong says, wow, Israel's committing a genocide right now, and you post this? Sick indeed. Christian Smalls A labor leader who has not endorsed Joe Biden, unlike Sean Fain, who said he was against genocide and then I guess apparently got over it. Chris Small says, don't let this post go over your head. Genocide Joe has to go. So there you have it. One of the most disgraceful days in modern American history. Super Bowl Sunday. Morning of, we warn him, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, do it, but be careful. He goes on TV. He tells a Sunday morning news audience, yeah, the president, he can fuck himself. I don't know what he means by that. We're going to do whatever we want. Then they do it. Then they blow children. I mean, look, the photo that went mega viral, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
Kit,
I do.
Little
I know.
girl
Yeah.
dangling from a building with no legs.
Yeah.
I mean, just horrible while we're all watching
Football.
our circus and eating our bread. Bread and circuses and mass murder. An all-American evening.
Please clap.